As MPs head off for their Easter break, campaigning for the European elections in 6 weeks' time gets underway. In a Sunday politics special, we'll debate the issues at stake on May the 22nd with senior party figures from the Conservatives, Labour, Liberal Democrats and UKIP. Here in the studio we have Syed Kamall, leader of the Conservatives in the European Parliament, Richard Howitt, chair of the Labour group of MEPs, Sarah Ludford, deputy leader of the Lib Dems in Europe, and Patrick O'Flynn, UKIP's Director of Communications. The vote to choose members of the European Parliament takes place on Thursday, the 22nd of May, the same day as local elections are held in parts of England and Northern Ireland. The UK sends 73 MEPs to Brussels, and the vote is a form of proportional representation. In total, there are 751 MEPs from the 28 member states. So what do they do all day? The European Parliament's power has grown. They vet the EU commissioners and they can amend, approve or reject nearly all EU legislation and the EU budget. Some laws MEPs have been responsible for include price caps on mobile phone charges, banking regulation and tougher food labelling. Let's get stuck in. Syed Kamall is first up. You have 30 seconds for your opening statement.
Thank you. Europe cannot go on as it is. Europe needs to change, and our relationship with Europe needs to change. Only the Conservatives have a plan to deliver that change and to offer the British people an in-out referendum. Labour and the Lib Dems won't. UKIP simply can't. Only the Conservatives will offer the 3 Rs with a Conservative MEP working alongside a Conservative Prime Minister. Reform, renegotiation and, above all, a referendum.
Syed Kamall. Sarah Ludford is next for the Lib Dems.
Your choice is simple. If you think Britain's better off in Europe, you must vote for the Liberal Democrats. Liberal Democrats are the only party of in, fighting to keep Britain in Europe and in work. There's nothing patriotic about UKIP's desire to pull out. That's playing Russian roulette with Britain's economy and jobs. The Conservatives are flirting with exit and Labour lacks the courage to speak up. Vote Liberal Democrat on May the 22nd to say in Europe for jobs and security.
And that was Sarah Ludford. Next, Labour's Richard Howitt.
The European elections are about who represents you. They're not a referendum on a referendum. And Labour MEPs believe in putting jobs and growth first. A guarantee to help young people into work, reforming energy markets so that bills are brought down for good. Labour believes in reform in Europe, but within. It's David Cameron who is risking your job and Britain's prosperity because of divisions in his own party. It's Labour MEPs that put British interests first.
Richard Howitt. Our fourth opening statement, Patrick O'Flynn for UKIP.
The EU is old hat. It's a declining regional trade bloc in an era of global trade. It's a mid-20th century political project designed to prevent conflict in Europe that is now actually reawakening old hostilities. It's an attempt to force on the European people Europeanness as their primary collective identity when they retain indelible pride in the nation state. It's hollowed out British democracy. Now we don't even control our own borders, and that's why you should vote UKIP on May the 22nd.
Patrick O'Flynn. That's the opening statements. Let's get on with the debate. Why should people vote at all in these elections? Patrick O'Flynn.
If you vote UKIP, we can deliver an earthquake that will really rock the foundations of British politics and the European political class as well. We can send a signal out to Europe that Britain has had enough, that Britain wants to retain its nation status and regain political power, regain the ability to forge trading deals across the world. Britain led Europe to freedom twice in the last century through bloodshed. We feel a UKIP win in those elections could help Britain set an example to lead the European nation states back to free assembly without being hauled into a superstate.
Syed Kamall, isn't it the case that many Tory-inclined voters are going to vote UKIP to keep you honest, to keep your feet to the fire on Europe?
Whatever you think of the European Parliament or you think of the EU, the fact is that the European Parliament now has equal power with the 28 governments of the EU. So, for example, when David Cameron delivered the first cut to the EU budget. The first ever cut to the EU budget. He needed a strong team of Conservative MEPs working alongside him in the European Parliament to deliver that cut and take it through to Parliament.
But many of your supporters are going to vote for UKIP for the reasons I gave, aren't they?
Many are going to vote Liberal Democrats as well, because we're the only clearly party in favour of in, and the Conservatives are all over the place.
Many of our supporters are going to vote for us because actually we're the only party actually trying to change the EU, often reform, often renegotiation and often a referendum. Labour and Lib Dems can't.
And how would you vote in such a referendum, Syed? We have no idea whether you would vote yes or no.
Well, why don't you let him answer? How would you vote?
Of course I'll answer that question. If the EU continues along its road towards the United States of Europe, and if at the time of the referendum there was no change, we hadn't achieved the reform that we've been asking for, then I probably would vote to leave.
But David Cameron hasn't even said what his list of demands is, so we have no idea what you want.
No buts, there will be a referendum by the end of 2017.
No, he said that if things don't change, he'll probably vote to leave. Is that right?
If at the time of the referendum things did not change and we didn't achieve any of our reforms, then I probably would vote to leave. But we have a golden opportunity to put reform on the agenda. And
I understand that, but we got the bit that you would vote to leave if things don't change. Richard, Howitt, it's the last time the British people had a say out on this was over 40 years ago.
Under a Labour government.
Under a Labour government, which was deeply divided on the issue, which is why you had a referendum. And that was a say on the common market. And of course, today's EU is a very, very different animal from the common market. So why can't we, under another Labour government, have another in-out vote?
Well, first of all, we want it to be more than just a free trading area. We make no apologies for that. So, yes, vote in these European elections, because this is half of Britain's exports, over half of investment coming in. And if you care about your job and your business, you can't hear from the party of government in this country that they probably want you to leave, because the CBI, the Engineering Employers Federation, the British Chambers of Commerce, 80% of whom say it's necessary to stay in.
So why not give us an in-out vote?
Andrew, we do want rights at work. When David Cameron says repatriate social powers, he means take away people's paid holidays, maternity rights for women.
But if the case is so strong, why not give us an in-out vote? According to you, you'd win it.
Ed Miliband has said that there will be an in-out referendum if there's a proposal for transfer of powers.
Why wait?
But the problem with the Conservative position is that this is based on a series of reforms. Labour's got a set of reforms at these European elections. David Cameron is silent about what they would be.
Richard, if you can say positive things about the EU, why is your leader missing in action? Ed Miliband is unable to say even the positive things that you're saying. He's absolutely run away from the argument. You don't even seem to be fighting European elections on European issues.
He actually said there wouldn't be a referendum in his time.
If I can answer the
yes,
point.
Richard
for the Conservative, to set a referendum on a set of reforms they won't say what they are is dishonest. For the Liberal Democrats, Nick Clegg made a huge mistake, giving a huge publicity opportunity to Nigel Farage recently. And Nick Clegg, he said that the Eurosceptic view was to leave Britain like Billy McNomates. All I can say is that he is the best qualified person to say that.
Well, let me come to a final point to Sarah Ludford here in this particular part of our debate. I mean, you've said that lots of people are going to vote Lib Dem. That's not what the polls are suggesting at all. You're 7% in 2 polls this morning. I mean, surely Nick Clegg's decision to champion Europe has been a disaster for you. You face wipeout.
We swayed a lot of people our way with Nick Clegg's debate, and I'm very proud of him. And we are the only party which is absolutely united, saying we must stay in Europe to reform it.
That's why you're 7% in the polls.
But it's absolutely essential because 3 to 4 million jobs are supported by our trade with the EU,
well,
and we're in absolutely fine morale. And we're finding actually a lot of moderate Conservative voters who are actually fed up with the Tories being split, divided all over the place, with Syed, you know, saying we might vote in, we might vote out.
The Conservatives are united around
and we are consistent. We are consistent.
Why are you only? Yeah, you're consistently 7%.
A poll in London showed that 18% would vote for us in London for the European elections, which I'm delighted about.
It may surprise you, but London is not the whole country. Let's move on. We're a member of the EU. The rules say that, with a few caveats, our fellow EU citizens are free to come here if they want. Why can't we just accept that? Syed Kamall.
Well, Britain has a proud record when it comes to immigration. We've been open for centuries to people right across the world to come to our great country, but we welcome people who come to our country to contribute, to pay taxes and to contribute to our society in a positive way. But there are 3 very real concerns that we have to address. The first one is numbers. Secondly is people who may come here not to work. but to come for benefits. And thirdly, is getting a hang of the numbers. And I think it's shameful only this week that the Office for National Statistics said that, that they did not collect sufficient figures, mostly under a Labour government, and 350,000 extra people came in. They did not count those numbers. That's the size of a city about Cardiff or Bradford. That is shameful. We have to get a handle on these numbers.
Yes, so these 350,000 came from all over the place. Do you accept the free movement of peoples within the EU?
I accept, and as Britain has historically been, open to people who want to come here and to contribute to our society in a positive way, in the same way...
Do you accept the free movement of peoples within
the EU?
We have asked in our manifesto, we have said that's one of the issues for reform. If you look at, we have to make sure that people are coming here to work, to contribute in a positive way, not simply to come here and turn up and live off the system.
Syed's been using the term shameful about Labour's immigration record, and he's quite right about that. But I'll tell you what else is shameful. What's shameful is David Cameron making a solemn pledge to the British people on an issue they really care about, to bring net immigration down to the tens of thousands a year, having no means of fulfilling that pledge. And we can see now it's back up to 212,000 a year because we have no volume control and no quality control from immigration from 24 or more neighbouring countries.
And
that is a disgrace.
I don't see how UKIP could address that issue.
Well,
only
because we would leave the EU.
MEPs. How are you going to leave the EU? Tell me how you're going to leave the EU.
We'll leave...
You don't have a single member of Parliament. You're probably not going to get a single member of Parliament.
Well, you're anticipating the British public.
Let him reply. He's here today hoping to get an MEP. So what do you say?
Sorry, you're addressing
his
Sarah
point. I'm asking Patrick O'Flynn. Well, I'll put another point to you to give you a moment to think. Almost 2 million Brits, almost 2 million Brits live and work in the rest of the EU. Isn't that valuable? Isn't that something worth having?
The majority of those Brits are wealthy, retired people. Now, I don't object to bilateral deals with European countries of similar living standards to us. When it was France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, that worked fine, didn't it? But all of these three people want Turkey to join the EU. That's 75 million more people from a poor country.
Let me bring you in. Jack Straw, former Labour Home Secretary, among many other things, he said it was a, quote, spectacular mistake for Labour to allow EU migrants from Poland and Hungary to work in the UK from 2004. Why should we trust a party that makes spectacular mistakes and hasn't really apologised for it?
Well, first of all, we accept it was a mistake. We have, and today again, I apologise. And we make a very firm commitment that for new EU member states in the future, we will put down those transitional controls. But when I listen to the Conservatives and the UKIP trying to rewrite history, saying that immigration was out of control, uncontrolled, open door, we hear it over and over again. It's not true. Anyone who was around at the time know that.
Come on, Richard.
And Labour...
Hold on, you undercounted by 350,000. You were letting 2 million in over the years, and that was an undercount by 350,000 people that you didn't know had come in. So why would we trust you when you can't even count?
Look,
you should have tightened the benefit rules.
Hold on, you have to let him answer.
The Conservative MEP today has, in 4 years in government in Britain, is actually trying to blame the previous Labour government over the fact they won't count people in and count people out. If you look at what Yvette Cooper has done, proposing to have benefit changes so that it's not easy for people to come to the country and quickly claim benefits, changing the habitual residence test, making sure at this European election we're going to say that migrants who come can't claim child benefit if their children are outside the country. Labour has shown that we have listened to concerns about immigration, but we do say that Britain is a stronger, better country because it is diverse and multicultural.
All right, I get that.
And UKIP will never say that, will you, Patrick?
This is fantasy politics from all the other parties here. They're committed to a system with no volume control and no quality control. And you talk about benefits as if it's only out-of-work benefits. In-work benefits cost an awful lot of money to the British taxpayer. So big businesses bring in minimum wage workers. It's £5,000 a school place.
And you say it's a majority of the 2 million Brits in other EU countries are pensioners. And you are going to have them all come back to Britain?
Don't be ridiculous.
How are we going to fund
Do you really think
Spain?
What will happen to the 2 million... Hold on, what will happen to the 2 million
We will
Brits
negotiate deals with those other governments. Do you really think Spain and Portugal, in their current situation, are going to turn their backs on British property owners with wealth who want to go and spend in their countries? Well, the pensioners quite often come back to Britain to use the health service because they only live abroad for a fraction of the year.
The US wants a trade deal with Europe.
Would you have a cap on non-EU immigrants?
No, we're not in favour of cap. What we are in favour
so no
of
cap on either.
No, well, a target. It's a moving feast, as it were.
Would you have a limit on non-EU immigrants?
We would have limit in the sense of quality. We would have people who are skilled migrants coming in. Well, by quality, not by quantity.
How would you do that?
All right.
Because they contribute to the UK economy.
We need to move on to foreign affairs. We need to move on to that. Should we pool more sovereignty to give the European Union more clout in foreign and defence matters? Richard Howitt.
No, I'm Labour's defence and foreign affairs spokesperson, and no, we don't need to pull more powers into Europe. But as we undertake this live debate, there are guns being fired in in Ukraine as we speak. Europe is facing, for the first time since the end of the Second World War, armies crossing national borders and threatening our peace.
So doesn't it need to come together more with a common foreign policy and a common defence policy?
We don't need more powers to do that. We need political will. And against Vladimir Putin, what we see is Europe has, in my view, fallen short in being willing to wage the level of sanctions that may be needed. But frankly, it is Europe, not Britain on its own. Remember Putin calling Britain Little England, a small island with no influence.
So he didn't realise that our gross domestic product is bigger than Russia's.
Yeah, Labour doesn't agree with that.
So
but if that's the mindset that allows someone like Vladimir Putin to send troops across borders threatening our peace, it's extremely worrying. And when we have in UKIP a party that say they admire Putin and that they support his policies, that is no recipe for how Europe should be run.
Well,
what do you say to that, Patrick?
I was waiting for this.
You should be.
We don't admire Putin as a leader of his country.
No,
we don't. What Nigel Farage, let me speak. What Nigel Farage said is he admired him as a political operator. Now, it was Theodore... Hang on a minute. It was Theodore Roosevelt who said a good foreign policy was speaking softly but carrying a big stick. What the EU does is shouts its mouth off while carrying a matchstick. It's a fantasy political idea that you would be able to stand up to Putin over the Ukraine. And what you've done is you've stoked up people. You have spoke. Of course, he's doing the wrong thing.
Do you admire what Putin is doing in Ukraine?
No. What matters in foreign policy is the outcome, and we have a terrible outcome in Ukraine, just like we have in Syria and Libya and Iraq beforehand.
Nick Clegg said that the idea of an EU army was, quote, a dangerous fantasy that is simply not true. So why then are we already working on EU-owned and controlled drones? And the President of the European Parliament has said the majority of MEPs want the EU to have, quote, deployable troops.
Well, he's not speaking for me, and he's not speaking for Liberal Democrats. The EU does not and will not have an army. Our defence is mainly shaped through NATO. What we must do is to get equipment which can operate together. We waste an awful lot of our spending in Europe because we duplicate equipment. We don't get the bang for our bucks that we should. That is a useful role of the EU to get equipment working together.
Syed, Kamall?
Yes. If you want to answer this question, the British Parliament is the right place with a British Foreign Secretary to decide our foreign policy.
Well, you say that, but can I just put a quote to David Cameron here? David, because this is germane to what you were saying there. David Cameron said last year, there is no doubt that we are more powerful in Washington, in Beijing, in Delhi, because we are a powerful player in the European Union.
Absolutely.
Do you agree?
Exactly. So what he's saying is that there are times when it comes to international affairs, foreign affairs, that you have to cooperate with partners. Often they are EU partners, but often they're non-EU partners. The problem we have here is we have a little European mentality.
Sarah, Washington has made it very clear that it wants Britain to talk through Brussels.
We hear a lot in this country about MPs' expenses. But isn't the real scandal the MEPs' gravy train? I mean, you've all got your snouts in the trough. Sarah Ludford.
I don't believe so. And Liberal Democrats have a policy of transparency. Our explanation of where we spend our allowances is online, and anyone can ask for to examine those. We have actually voted to reform MEPs' allowances. We regularly vote, but unfortunately, majority in the Parliament don't. We voted to cut them, and we have voted. Yes, we voted to cut about 5%. I think it was. 5%. We voted to have economy flights. I never fly except across the Atlantic. I never fly to Brussels or Strasbourg.
It's difficult to do it the other way.
Well, you could go by boat.
I didn't swim.
I don't think you walk on water yet.
But we voted for economy flights, we voted for an European Parliament policy of transparency, which unfortunately other groups have. UKIP never turned up to vote anyway. Well, they don't earn their salaries because they don't do anything, so they should hand all their salary and allowances back.
Well, you can't have it both ways. On the one hand, accusing UKIP of being on the gravy train, then the other that we don't claim our attendance allowance as much as you do because our MEPs aren't there as much. That means we're better value for money. No, your attendance allowance is if you're actually there, and you're saying we don't turn up. So that's a bit of a contribution,
isn't it? You're in the building
isn't it?
And you claim your allowances. Well, no, because you're not an MEP because UKIP are so ashamed of what their MEPs have done in Brussels. They didn't even field an MEP.
No, I had the honour.
I had
the honour. I think each party decides who it wishes to field. Yeah, and I had the honour of being the UKIP representative. And I would say, just going by the last few weeks, and the people who come up to me and say we're voting UKIP, we're sick of all the others, things are quite exciting for UKIP. I think we've touched a chord with the British public because you're all part of the same move to a European superstate.
We had a UKIP European candidate last week in Hertfordshire who got a parking ticket from the police and called the police fascists.
Well, look,
these people aren't
here. Let's
keep proper to stand for elected office.
Patrick Flynn, I'll let you have a quick reply.
We can all bring up these parochial cases. I remember not so long ago. No, listen. Not so long ago, a Lib Dem councillor was sent down for firebombing. I don't say Lib Dems are a bunch of arsonists, although now I think of it, Nick Clegg might have burnt some cactuses once. But you can all fish out sort of.
I'm glad you pronounced that word carefully. Viviane Reding, the EU's Justice Commissioner, says we need to build a United States of Europe with the Commission as its government. Is she right? Richard Howitt.
No, not at all. Ooh. But the future, if we take the next 10 years, thinks about climate change and the fact that we're not going to hit the 2-degree target, and Europe has led and needs to lead in terms of getting a more sustainable world. She's wrong because the powers are there and it's the political will to use them.
I think the balance is broadly about right. In fact, there's some areas where I'd like to see it slimmed down a bit because I believe there's some, including whether I'm not sure the EU should be funding food banks, to be honest. I think that's a national responsibility. I think the EU has got to concentrate on the big challenges: climate change, the economy, air pollution, catching criminals, serious criminals and so on. And if we want to fritter away our political capital on things which are interfering in national matters, then we don't have the support to tackle those big challenges.
Would you still want to join the euro one day?
Well, now it's not, it's not appetite, but I'm
not talking about now, one day.
Well, we want the Eurozone to be sound,
I didn't ask you that either. Would you want to join the euro one day?
If it's a success and if it suits the British economy, now is not the time. But the idea, in principle, of a single currency has advantages, and we'll keep it under
one day,
review.
That was yes, Andrew.
We're not ruling it out forever.
What would our relationship be with Europe in the future if UKIP got its way and we left?
We would be trading partners with Europe. We would also seek partnership in specific policy areas.
So would we be Norway?
Andrew, can I just say,
would we be Norway?
Would we be Norway? We'd be in a much stronger position than Norway because we're actually the Eurozone's biggest export market in the world. We could negotiate a bespoke trading agreement reflecting our enormous importance to the European market.
Not on services, which make up over 80% of our economy.
We are the Eurozone's biggest export market in the world.
Yeah, but they mainly export goods to us. Our biggest exports are services, and they wouldn't have to agree to free trade in services. They still haven't.
Can I read you something?
Why would they agree if we were outside?
Let me read you something.
Only if it's relevant.
Let me read you something. There would be a free trade agreement in place the day after our exit. Germany would demand no less. Do you know who said that?
Free trade?
Not some UKIPper. Yeah. That's Digby Jones, Mr. British Businessman.
We're going to have to stop now.
As an open country.
No point. Keep talking because we're about to finish. I thank all four of you for a very spirited debate. I'm sure Mr. Clegg and Mr. Farage will have learned a lot from it about how to debate.